Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's broadcast titled Proposal Support Function from Stepchild to Strategic Partner, presented by our guest speaker, BJ Lownie. My name is Andrew Stone, Customer Success Manager here at RFPIO, and I will be hosting today's presentation. But before we begin, we have a few housekeeping items. We'll be recording today's broadcast, and it will be available following the presentation on YouTube and in our Help Center for our customers. All attendees will be on mute throughout the duration of the broadcast. However, you can still submit questions for BJ directly using the Q&A tool within the Zoom application in the toolbar there. And lastly, you can also ask questions or make comments via social media using the hashtag proposal support. It is an honor for me to introduce our speaker, BJ Lownie. He is a founder, he's a founder, managing director, and principal consultant of strategic proposals. During over his 30 years in proposal development, BJ has worked on hundreds of proposals, trained thousands of professionals, and developed proposal centers around the world. He is credited with helping his clients capture billions of dollars in revenue and credited with many of the accepted proposal development practices in place today. He is a founding member and fellow of the Association of Proposal Management Professionals and is recognized as a thought leader on proposal development. And lastly, he is the co-author of the bestseller Proposal Essentials, available on Amazon, and the popular blog Proposal Guys. Please welcome BJ Lownie.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciated. Nice to be with you all. Those of you that know me, nice to see you. Those of you that are new or haven't heard me present before, it's a pleasure. Andrew mentioned the book Proposal Essentials. Myself and John Williams put that out several years ago. We actually have a book that is coming out this week. John and I have been running a blog called The Proposal Guys, which many of you on here, I'm guessing, follow that. We've just produced a book based on the best of that blog called Passionate About Proposals. And it's so new that I don't even know where you can get it. Proposal Essentials is on Amazon and Hulu. Passionate About Proposals, I'm not sure. Send me an email and I will let you know. First thing up on this presentation is a copyright statement. I'm happy to provide this presentation afterwards. You send me an email, I'll send you a distribution copy, but bear in mind that it is copyright protected. It can't be used without permission from me. We just don't want the presentation being shown that we don't know about. So why I'm here, I should say this is an encore presentation. This was presented live for RFPIO in New York City about a month ago. And it had enough interest that it was requested to broadcast this webinar. That's very flattering to me, and I'm happy to do it. So why I'm here, share knowledge, especially around currently accepted best practice, foster a passion for proposal development, make the work you do more satisfying and enjoyable, and a little bit tongue-in-cheek to help you live longer and enjoy life. But I think some of that's true. In the best of cases, you're thrilled with your work and enjoying it, and you have great work-life balance. You're handsomely or appropriately compensated, etc. In the worst of cases, you're giving up your weekends and holidays and working 12 to 14 hours, and 7 days a week. And we'd like to try to help you stop that. So 3 questions I'd ask you as we start this, and actually go back as I jumped over that slide. In New York, we ask questions, and I asked the questions, obviously, we can't really get a response, but you can understand the questions. We asked, we said, stand up if you've worked on proposals for less than a year, and we found out who the new kids were. We asked people to stand up if they'd worked on proposals more than 15 years, and we found out who the folks with lots of time and grade were. We asked questions around proposals, group size, stand up if you're an army of one, and we recognize those poor folks that do everything, wear all the hats and have no support. And then we asked people to stand up if their group was more than 5 people, and we saw the people that had a more appropriate level of resources. asked people to stand up if they were highly organized, if they were big picture, if they enjoyed writing, if they were project managers, etc. And we got a feel for who was in the room. If we were able to do so here, we'd find that out. So I posed 3 questions at the beginning. Number 1, is proposal development your job, or do you consider it, or I should say, just a job, or is it your chosen profession? A profession being something that you're committed to getting better at and you see as long-term, rather than just something you're doing for a paycheck at the current time. I asked the question, are you seen as administrative support, or are you a critical sales support function? Are you seen as glorified admin, or are you seen as highly valued, respected, etc.? And then I asked the question that the title comes from: are you treated like a stepchild or as a strategic partner? One of my favorite quotes came from someone when I spoke about proposals being a stepchild. I had somebody come up to me afterwards and they said, "No, we're not a stepchild. We're the kid from down the block that's at the dinner table and nobody knows who invited them," which is about the worst case or worst analogy I guess you could come up with. Says it's even worse than being a stepchild. So jumping into this, ignore the on empowerment. That was something that came out of New York. The topics I plan to cut, well, let me go back. Yeah, there's me self-censoring myself. I spoke about this because in New York, the keynote by Ganesh from RFPIO, he spoke about empowerment, and I shared a favorite empowerment story. And it applies to this webinar if you think about whether you're a stepchild or whether you're a strategic partner to sales and maybe moving along that spectrum. I told this story, and it's a true story because you can't make up the good stuff. I happened to be at a hotel having a meal, and the person serving myself and my colleague was wearing a button that said, "I'm empowered." And we were intrigued by the button and asked him what it was about. And this particular wait person said that the entire hotel staff had been away on a retreat. The retreat was focused on empowerment and what they could do and how they could provide customer service, and that they were empowered to offer customer service, etc. And we chatted with the gentleman about it a little bit, and we were intrigued. And then in closing, the gentleman said to us, we said, "Yeah, so you got the button at the retreat?" And he said, "Yeah, they make us wear them." So you can appreciate, no doubt, the irony in that statement, that an entire retreat on empowerment, and yet they're forced to do something that maybe they don't want to do. Empowerment comes from within. It's up to the individual. It's up to you. It's up to me. Either we're empowered or we're not. If it doesn't come from you, well, you get it. So topics I'm going to cover, and you'll see it's a pretty good list. A quick review of Proposals 101, the basics, because without the basics, the rest of it doesn't hang. We'll talk about, we'll hit on developing high quality, high impact responses, pre-written content, proposal support as a profession, the proposal support function as a strategic partner, and then finally changing management's mindset. So that's what we're gonna do. As regards the information I'll present, again, some of you may have heard me. I've been presenting now for 30 plus years. I've spoken to tens of thousands of, not tens of thousands, close to 10,000, I guess. The APMP current membership is almost 10,000. And I've presented at the APMP conferences for 30 years now. In a given year now, I do about 6 of them, typically Midwest, Southern states, Northeast, Southern Cal, all of those. So about the information I'll present. One, you may already know it. And it's just a refresh. That's entirely possible. There's a lot of experienced proposal professionals out there. So I'm probably not telling you anything new, just a reminder or a refresh. With a little luck, maybe I'll provide some new insights, provide a different perspective than you had previously. For some of you, especially new folks, maybe it'll be new information, something you haven't heard before. And then finally, and importantly, it might differ than what you thought previously, and it might not change what you think, and that's okay. I've worked with my partner, John Williams, for close to 20 years now. We started together in about '99. And I affectionately say that we agree on 80%, 15% we'll argue about, and 5%, well, John's categorically wrong, and that's okay. I still respect him. So bear that in mind as we go forward. Guiding principle number one, the greater danger is not that our goals are too high and we miss them, but that we aim too low and reach them. That's quoted by Michelangelo, and this really translates into aim high rather than aim for mediocrity. And you'll find as you hear me speak, and if you know me, I do aim high when it comes to proposal development, the profession of proposal development. I don't aim for it to be just okay. I aim for it to be a killer profession for adhering to best practices, doing things the right way, and not just doing the best we can with what we've got. That for me, it's not about getting something out the door that's merely compliant, but getting something out the door that's very compelling, high scoring, etc. So you'll find me aiming high, and some of you may say, wow, you know, that's a really high bar, but so be it. Better to have a high bar and come a little short than to have a really low bar and make that bar. The second guiding principle, Mark Twain said it, Lincoln said it, Voltaire said it in different ways. It seems to me that common sense isn't all that common. And that's all I have, folks, is what I offer in my presentations, and the guiding principle for my work is it's about common sense. It's about the basics. I train as I've got training as a martial artist. I'm a certified professional ski instructor. In both of those disciplines, it's about the basics. It's about your stance. It's about your kick. It's about your punch in skiing. It's about, you know, how well you pressure your skis, etc. Same with proposal development. There's some basics that need to be applied, and when those are applied correctly, things go much better. Without those basics, without the foundation, the rest of it falls apart. And those basics are largely common sense. So without further ado, a quick review of the basics of proposal development. One, we hear people say, what's your win rate? And people talk about wins. So to be clear, in my way of thinking, a win can be obviously the award of contract. You ask people what's a win, and that's what you hear at the top of the list, the award of the contract. But it can also be just influencing future buying decisions, especially if you're responding to an RFP in a new market where you haven't been before, or it's outside of your bread and butter area. So you might have to bid just to get noticed, just to be on the list and be considered for future. You might bid just to get information out into the greater marketplace. You know, you might not win that particular RFP, but maybe others will in the industry will take notice. It might be to gain information. Bidding on an RFP, you get to go to a bidders conference, you're privy to other information, and that becomes a valid reason for bidding, even if you may not be awarded. And then there's other reasons, like, you know, the company CEO says, because I said so. And I've been involved in those where the higher ups have said, we're going to bid on it, and you don't need to know why, and you don't really know whether you're going to win or not, just it's an executive decision. So just want to be clear, when we talk about winning, when we're working on a proposal, we want to understand what is our definition of success. Where it falls down is when everybody knows there isn't a chance of winning, and some salesperson is doing a rah-rah, come on, we're going to win this one, and everybody knows it's not winnable. Better to be honest and have a legit reason for success, and ideally not bid on something where there is no chance of success by any definition. And unfortunately, and I'm sure there's people here on this webinar that have had to bid on those that you know are absolutely hopeless, and it's actually just a waste of money, time, money, and energy. The win rate is predictable. Some of you may raise an eyebrow. I might raise an eyebrow on some of you. Here's how it's predictable. If you want a 100% win rate, as you might already guess, the way you do that is only bid on something that you absolutely positively know you're going to win. Right? A customer says, give me anything and I'll give you the award. Only bid on that. Congratulations, you won. You have a 100% win rate. Of course, that's not a great way to run business, but that's a 100% win rate. And the other end of the spectrum, if you want your win rate to be 0 or close to 0, bid on anything that moves. You know, and I'd offer a favorite question that I raise with clients, especially new clients, is this: if a truck were driving out past your offices and hit a speed bump and an RFP fell off the back, would somebody from your organization run out, grab it, and say, "Look, I've got another one"? And no doubt some of you are chuckling or saying, "Yeah, that's us." And no doubt your win rate is low because that's not how you achieve a high win rate. So if you bid on everything, it's going to approach 0. If you're highly selective, it's going to be much higher, approaching 100%. Therefore, it's predictable. And it's a strategic decision, and it's owned by sales, right? If sales chooses only to go after bread and butter accounts and only that which they know they have a high probability of winning, congratulations, you have a high win rate. If sales decides to go after a brand new market, someplace where they don't know the client, never operated before, etc., you're probably going to be less successful. And that's why it's a strategic decision owned by sales. Continuing on some of the basics, no proposal in and of itself ever won an opportunity. That's not how it happens. A proposal being awarded the opportunity, much as they're assessing it by way of a proposal, they're looking at the company reputation, they're looking at company size, they're looking at previous experience, they're looking at financial stability, et cetera, et cetera. And the proposal itself, submitting a proposal with no relationship, with no previous knowledge of the client, et cetera, you're just not going to win the business. The reverse, a poor quality proposal can cause the loss of an opportunity which might have been won otherwise. Absolutely true, and no doubt anyone on here with a few years of experience has had the unfortunate occurrence that a proposal, either you missed requirements or you failed to adhere to instructions, or you submitted too late, you were disqualified for some reason, when in fact you might have won the business otherwise. So it's incumbent upon us as the proposal support function to make sure we're not the ones causing the loss of the opportunity. An analogy I use is that a proposal is like the sail on a boat. That is, if the sail is up and full of air and properly trimmed, it'll pull the boat forward. If the sail is reefed, that is, it's down and wrapped up around the mast, it's neutral. It's not pulling the boat forward, and it's also not causing any kind of delay. It's not helping, but it's not hindering. That's a compliant proposal. It's really not doing a whole lot for you, but it's also not hindering you. Worst case, and perhaps there's some sailors on here, and they'd know the worst case, which is the sail becomes detached from the mast and ends up in the water. And once the sail is in the water and gets waterlogged, it slows the boat down. And worst case, again, sailors on here will know, and they're probably cringing, it will pull the boat underwater. You can actually capsize a sailboat by the sail becoming soggy and becoming, for all intent and purposes, a sea anchor and dragging the boat down. And that would be a proposal that causes disqualification, right? So fully trimmed up, that's a good proposal. Reefed, it's neutral, and in the water, that's a proposal that's non-compliant. So again, and I mentioned these, here's what a client considers: market position, financials, relationship, the previous experience, the solution offer, and finally the quality of the proposal. And we as proposal support, the only one we can really affect for the most part is that last one, the quality of the proposal. The rest of them, I dare say the majority of the people on this call, myself included, we don't get to influence those others. Perhaps a little bit on the solution and offer. There's proposal centers that maybe own the pricing or have something to do with contract terms. But for the most part, we don't get to influence any of those. And the top factors there above quality of proposals, those weigh much more heavily. They just happen to be encapsulated in the proposal we submit. Continuing on with the basics, and I do recognize these are the basics. I'm sure some of you are rolling your eyes going, Mr. Lownie, do I really need to be told what a proposal is? And yet I find in my presentations and in my work, a large majority, if I ask this question, they can't answer it. They'll either hem and haw, or they'll have some extended version that dances around it. For my purposes, and it's a mantra for me, it's this: a proposal is a package sales presentation with all the same considerations. Those being, who's the audience, who's the decision maker, what do they want to hear, what should I say, what shouldn't I say, what's the venue, how formal is the meeting, how much time do I have to speak, and all of those play into a proposal. In a live presentation, it's how much time do I have to speak, and in a proposal, it's what's the page count or word count. In a proposal, it's what's the strategic message. In a live one, it's what should I say, what shouldn't I say? Here's why it's real important. A sales presentation is obviously owned by the salesperson. And from my way of thinking, the proposal is owned by sales. We don't own it. It is a vehicle for sales to use to advance the opportunity. They need to be fully committed to developing the proposal. That's not to say they need to be 100% involved, and I'll talk about that, but they need to be fully committed. Therefore, it's inappropriate for sales to, show up, throw it over the wall and say, here you go, I'll be back when you're done. It doesn't work that way. It's their document. They need to be involved. We can't do it and shouldn't do it if they're not involved. With that said, so if a proposal is a package sales presentation, and we talked about what it takes to win, what's the goal and objective of a proposal? And if you say win business, well, wait a minute, we said a proposal in and of itself can't win business, so it has to be different. For our purposes, those being strategic proposals, our clients, myself, here's what the goals are. Number one, adhere to the instructions, and we own that. Address all the requirements, and we own that partially. As proposal support, we own making sure each requirement is addressed. We don't necessarily own that it's addressed properly. And I'll talk about that more when we get to roles and responsibilities. The goal and objective: answer all the questions and all parts. If a question 57 has A through D, we need to make sure we answer A through D, not just A, B, and C. The job: provide the best possible response, provide the necessary information supporting that response, and ideally strive to receive the highest score possible. So that's the job of a proposal. If we do that, we've done all we can do as a proposal. The rest lays with the company and sales, developing the relationship, having the right products and services, financial stability, etc. To say it a little bit differently, the goal of a proposal is, number one, to be easy to read and understand. That is, everything is well articulated, it's written appropriately, etc. It's to be easy to navigate and review, which is based on how it is formatted, the headers, the footers, the indexing, the table of contents, etc. The way each page might say, this is question 57, part A continued, rather than not having anything that tells you what's going on that page. And many of you will have proposals where it's a full page of text and nothing at the top to say what that text is related to. And you can turn back a page and there's still nothing, and you turn back a page and at the top of it, it says question 57. Well, it would be so much better if each of those pages said question 57 continued, so that somebody knew where they were. And then finally, It's to make it easy to give it the best score. So it wants to be easy to read and understand, easy to navigate, and easy to give a high score. That's the goal of a proposal. So moving on, we know what a proposal is. It's a package sales call. It's a package sales presentation. We understand, as I've just highlighted, the goal, and then we need to understand what makes for high quality, high impact proposal. And if we were in a live presentation and I asked what constitutes a high quality, high impact proposal, I'd get lots of answers, and they'd be in two categories. The first category being the information, what the proposal says, and the second category being how that information is presented. So we have to look, when looking at the quality of a proposal, when you're running a checklist, when you're evaluating, you need to look at it from two perspectives. What does it say, and how well does it say it? If we look at the information, you're looking at just that, the information. If we're looking at presentation, we're looking at how is that presented. If I go to here, the information, a simple checklist, and hopefully some of you use a checklist when developing a proposal. Hopefully you occasionally assess your proposals. The high-level checklist would have this. Is the information customer-centric? Is it more about them than about you? Is there a compelling strategic message? Does it clearly state why they should pick you and why not somebody else? Is the information complete? Is it compliant? Have you adhered to the instructions? Have you complied with all of the instructions? Have you complied with all of the requirements? Is it correct? Is it accurate? Is it relevant? Is it appropriately weighted? That would be my short list on the information. And we have that available, and we're happy to supply that. If you sent me an email, I can send you a simple checklist to use. On the presentation side, again, coming back to the goal of proposals, is it easy to understand? That is it does it clearly articulate the strategic message? When we're talking about the solution, is that clear from an English language perspective? On the information side, we want it to be clear from a technological perspective. On the presentation side, we want it to be correct to the language used. That is spelling, punctuation, word usage, grammar, etc. We'd be looking at how well it's formatted and how easy it is to navigate appropriately. Headers, footers, table of contents, text versus graphics, etc. And then overall, does it have a professional appearance? That's what we'd be looking for under presentation. And all of that is what constitutes a high impact, high scoring proposal. So continuing on with the proposals 101, almost done with it. What's it take to produce one of these? What's required? It's this. Number one, specific information about the client, about your capabilities, and about the competition, what we affectionately call the 3 C's. And without any one of those, you're operating with a deficit, right? You need to know who the client is, what they're after, what their issues are, what their hot buttons are. You need to know who the competition is, and if you don't know who you're competing against, it's real hard to position yourself. And you need to know about your own company capabilities, etc. You need specific skills and knowledge. You need planning and management capabilities. You need writing and content development capabilities, formatting capabilities, production capabilities. You need processes for which those skills are applied. You need a process for facilitating and developing strategy. You need a process for developing content. You need a process for QC reviews and approvals. And without those, you're operating in an ad hoc manner, and that's not a way to produce high quality documents. You need resources, especially pre-written content. This being a webinar for RFPIO, pre-written content becomes an important element here, the idea of having not only having pre-written proposal ready, approved content, but a way to access it easily in an automated fashion. And obviously that's the game that RFPIO is in. That's what their application is for, is to make it as easy as possible to quickly get at that information, pull it out, and turn it into a high impact, high scoring proposal. And then finally, you need time. If you need a week and you've only got a day, it's not going to be pretty. You need as much time as possible. Inevitably, in a live presentation, when I mention time, someone will raise their hand and say, but the customer decides how much time we have. And that's both true and false. I'd offer that the customer defines the period of time from when the RFP is released until the time that it's due. I worked on a major proposal over the past year and a half that had a 45-day turnaround. And we worked on it for 18 months. We started fully 16 months before the RFP came out because we knew how big it was and the work that would be involved. I use the analogy in my presentations of cooking a gourmet meal. I happen to have people in my family that are chefs, and when they prepare for a dinner, which might take 30 minutes to prepare, as far as the cooking itself, they'll spend hours in prep work, and very often I'm involved in that prep work, cutting various ingredients, preparing, having the onions chopped and ready to go, the mushrooms sliced just so, and whatever other ingredients are there, those are put into bowls and ready. You've seen those cooking shows where they cook for 5 minutes, but somebody has spent hours preparing everything, making sure that the knives are sharp and the oven is clean and ready to go. It's the same with proposals. Just because the customer gives you 1 week doesn't mean you should only take a week. You should be doing things beforehand, including the development of pre-written content, including getting your resources together, lining people up, etc. As regards time, taking it a little bit further, I'd have you consider there's 3 phases to proposal development. That is design, coming up with what you're going to say, what you're going to include, what you're not going to include, both text and graphics. Developing that, cleaning it up, making it more articulate, rendering the graphics, proofing everything, doing your QC. And then production, that is, whether it's hard copy or soft copy, electronic or hard copy, all of that's involved in producing the document itself. As regards those 3 phases and the allocation of time, herein lies the problem. And no doubt many of you will see yourselves here. Typical allocation of time. Design gets some inordinate amount of time, 80%, 85, 90, 95, etc. That leaves very little time for development. So in the design phase, your subject matter experts, SMEs, and sales spend a whole lot of time figuring out what they're going to say and what the solution is, what the products are, and pricing. God forbid we ever get pricing early on. And then there's a scramble to write it all up. We might have time to spell check it, but we certainly don't have time for thorough reviews, leaving even less time for production. We rush it out the door, and we don't produce our best work. What this does, the only concern is really designing the solution and offer, and it uses up too much of the available time. And again, many of you will be involved in efforts that operate this way. Done right, it looks more like this. The allocation of time is design gets maybe 50%, which allows an appropriate amount of time for development, rewriting, making it more articulate, editing it, proofing it, polishing it, all of that goes into creating a brilliant document, allowing appropriate time for production, including reviews, approvals, QC, and so on, and leaves a little bit of breathing room for any necessary contingencies. This then honors both the solution offer, the quality, and meeting the deadline. It's all of that. So I'd have you think about the allocation of time as looking like this. And I'd highlight something here. We tend to be our own worst enemies. And again, for many of you, I'm only telling you what you already know. Herein lies how we're our own worst enemies. If the proposal is to be released on the 1st, and it's due on the 30th, we have 30-day turnaround time, and sales or an SME asks, when's it due? What's their immediate thought? How much time do they have? And if you're thinking, oh, they'll say they have till the 26th or the 27th or the 28th, you're right. That's exactly what they think. Oh, we're not doing it till the 30th. Why are you bugging me now? Here's how we serve ourselves better. We serve proposal development better. If it's released on the 1st and it's due on the 30th, and sales says, when's it due? We want to say, I need all your stuff by the 15th, right? The end of design. They might be involved in some reviews and development, but for the most part, sales and subject matter experts are involved in the design period and about half of the development period. And when they say, yeah, okay, you want my stuff by the 15th, but when are we submitting this? Our answer to them is, your stuff is due by the 15th. And just repeat that mantra. Drive them towards the middle rather than towards immediately before the submission date. And again, I know many of you know this. I'm just reiterating what you might know already. As regards developing responses, I want to present two different versions, the bottom up and top down. The more typical bottom up, and many of you will recognize this, it's this. You consider the question, what did they ask? You then gather information from various sources, including previous responses, knowledge base, whatever you did before. Maybe sales or an SME has something, or that fourth one there, MSU. Some of you will know that right away. Some of you are scratching your head going, what's MSU? MSU is make something up. It's also used as make stuff up. And the S is also used for a rather derogatory term that I won't use here. So let's leave it at make something or make stuff up. And that's not what we want to be doing. And in fact, let me take it further. If you are, in fact, one of those that when you can't get something from an SME or sales, and you do, in fact, make something up, you're an enabler. You're solving a symptom, not a problem. You're allowing sales or subject matter experts off the hook by filling in the blank that they should fill in. Better that on question 57, it should say, Tom requested this repeatedly from Tom. Tom has not responded, and leave it at that, rather than making up something that you think Tom might have submitted. That gets the problem solved. And yes, it takes some guts to do that, and it takes some support from your manager and senior management, but that's how problems get solved. Then maybe some additional information is added, some information is deleted, gets a quick review if you have time, and it's out the door. Not your best possible response. I would liken this to, if you will allow again the food analogy, to preparing a meal by going to your refrigerator, seeing what you have for leftovers, pulling it out, doctoring it up a little bit, and then serving it. That's a leftover meal served from the bottom up, straight out of the refrigerator. Let's look at it from the top down, best practice case. Number one, we carefully consider the question being asked. I'll ruin some of your day because you'll end up with the refrain stuck in your head. You want to think Spice Girls. and I'll wait a minute while you chuckle a bit or groan, you'll remember the refrain, right? Tell me what you want, what you really want. That's what you want to be thinking when you get a question. When they ask about financial stability, what do they really want to know? They don't want to just know numbers. They want to know that you're in it for the long haul, that you're stable, that their investment will be protected. When they ask about the company organization, they don't want to just know who's who. They want to know whether it's stable, what changes have taken place, what changes might be coming down the pike. You want to think about what are they asking, what do they really want to know? You then want to consider what's the best possible answer they could receive. Not what's the best answer can you give them, not yet, but what's the best possible answer they could receive. That becomes their magic wand or their wish list answer, and it becomes our target. And against that target, we need to determine what's the best possible answer we can provide. That's very different than pulling out leftovers. If you'll allow the analogy, this is looking at what does the customer want to eat? What's the best possible meal we could serve them? Or what's the best possible meal they want? And then what's the best possible meal we could serve them? And then and only then, look at what we have in the knowledge base or what's leftovers in the refrigerator. But we're not just doctoring up leftovers. We're preparing a meal with the necessary ingredients. And if we happen to have some chopped onions in the refrigerator and they're still fresh, we might use them. But that's not the basis of our decision we're drawing from the top. We then add the appropriate supporting information. We thoroughly, comprehensively, and appropriately review that response, both sales, subject matter experts, proposal support function, and senior management as needed. That's where the good stuff comes from, folks. And if you're thinking, but Mr. Lownie, that takes time. Yeah, that's why we have to allow appropriate time for development. You can't rush the good stuff. You can accelerate it some, but you can only crunch it so far. If you're doing it bottom up, grab some leftovers, doctor them up and serve them, you can do that pretty quickly. Preparing a gourmet meal takes a whole lot more thought, appropriate materials, and time. As regards the proposal-ready, approved, pre-written content, ideally automated, again, using food analogies. Picture how a layperson prepares a meal. You know, they take out some ingredients and they figure out what they need, etc. As I've already mentioned, you picture the TV meal, or if I'm watching my son or my brother's son-in-law preparing a meal, they're both chefs. Everything is laid out for them. You know, they cook. They're not chopping onions. They're not cutting up mushrooms, etc. All of that is done before they start cooking. They spend their time cooking, not prepping. And the pre-written content allows the same thing. When you've got a proposal to do, when you get the standard question, and some huge percentage of a proposal in most industries is the same, right? You're going to be asked about financial stability. You're going to be asked about organizational structure. You're going to be asked about previous litigation. You're going to be asked for resumes. You're going to be asked for your implementation methodology. You shouldn't be developing that from scratch each time. You should be able to click your fingers and go, give me the company overview, give me the financial statements, give me previous litigation, and then spend your time cooking. That is customizing it for the particular client. That's why you want to have the pre-written content. And ideally, you want an application like the RFPIO application that allows you to do that with a click of a button, rather than having to go through files or going to somebody and saying, don't you have, you want to have that at your ready. Continuing on, into roles and responsibilities. And we're staying on track for finishing up here about 2 to 10 Eastern time. I happen to be in the greater Boston area. I want to talk about two things: the proposal team and the proposal support function, which sits inside the team. For our purposes at Strategic Proposals, you have sales, subject matter experts, and the proposal support function, what we affectionately call the three-headed partner. I actually refer to it as the three-headed monster, but maybe politically correct, it's the three-headed partner. For each of these, there needs to be a head person. There needs to be a lead. There needs to be a lead salesperson. There needs to be a lead subject matter expert, and there needs to be a lead for the proposal support function. Each of those leads owns something called the HWID. That being, that term is actually from my wonderkin brother Ken, much smarter, younger, better looking, and smarter and more successful. Well, depending on how you define success, but annoyingly younger and better looking. He has hair, I don't. He coined the term. He's a corporate executive, and he'll get one of his groups together. He'll listen. He'll get input, and when it's appropriate, he'll stop the conversation and he'll use his HWID, which is he'll say, "Here, thank you for your input. Here's what I've decided." And we need to have that for sales, for the strategy, for subject matter experts, for the solution, and for the proposal support function, those various elements that we're responsible for. It's all well and good that sales and subject matter experts might have some input, but for those elements that we own, we get to say, or the proposal lead gets to say, "Thank you for your input. Here's what I've decided." And it looks like this. Sales owns the appropriate, bringing in the appropriate opportunity. Sales owns the relationship with the client. Sales owns the strategic messaging and the positioning of the solution. And sales owns the final review. After all, this is a package sales presentation. They get the final say. So when it comes to strategy, we might have some input from subject matter experts. You might have some input from the proposal support function. Sales gets to say, "Thank you. I appreciate your input. Now here's what I've decided. This is our strategy. These are our key messages." The measurement for sales is achieving success. However, the win is defined. Maybe that's the award of opportunity. Maybe it's just future business. As we said, providing information, gaining information. Sales owns is measured by the relationship with the client. Sales is measured by having the appropriate information from the client. As regards subject matter experts, excuse me, I'm taking a sip of water if you can hear me drinking. Please feel free to do the same. And I'd go sideways. I am sitting here in an office appropriately dressed for conducting a presentation. And I say that because I know some of you somewhere are sitting around in a bathrobe or your jammies, which is okay. I can't see you, you can't see me. As regards subject matter experts, their responsibility is largely the solution, the offer, the products, services, staffing, implementation. In amongst subject matter experts, I include pricing, contract terms, customer visits, site visits, etc. And their measurement is the competitiveness of the solution, the offer, and the elements, the terms and conditions, the pricing, etc. Subject matter experts, they get the final say on this is the solution and offer that we should present. And in some cases, sales will have a large say in that as well, and to a certain extent be the subject matter expert on pricing or terms and conditions. And then there's a proposal support function where we live. Our roles and responsibilities fall under 5 main areas. So I'm going to break the proposal support function out by 5 different elements, actually 4 plus 1. Those being business and strategy, planning and management, content development, document management and production, and in parentheses, knowledge base administration and support. And I'd stop here for a minute. If you look at this list, even just this list of 5 without going in depth, for those of you that are wearing all the hats, more power to you, that you can be a business strategist, a brilliant project manager, a brilliant content developer, writer, editor, proofreader, able to format, able to produce, ship, copy, etc., and keep a handle on the pre-written content in a knowledge base. Wow, you've got big shoulders, and that's amazing that you have the personality, the skills, the background to do all of that. Ideally, that wouldn't be the case. I use, again, the restaurant analogy. You know, if you're a sandwich shop or a low-end restaurant, maybe the same person that takes your order goes in the back and cooks, or maybe the person taking your money also washes the dishes. In a gourmet restaurant, that's not the case. You have a front of the house, back of the house, and you have prep cooks and sous chefs, and you have executive chefs, and you have maitre d's and waiters and dishwashers and cleaning personnel and managers. And at the high end, as a strategic partner, a proposal support function is going to operate more like a gourmet restaurant and serve gourmet meals rather than operate like a low-end restaurant. Taking each of these in turn, business and strategy. The responsibility here is being proactive, perhaps working with sales to get a heads up on what's coming in, working on the forecast to know that there's a big one around the corner and getting it scheduled. A key piece of it is the facilitation of the strategy and key messages. And I say facilitation, the proposal support function never owns the strategy. It's owned by sales. It's their responsibility. The strategy, in a word, can be termed as answering the question of why your offer and why not the competition. And sales owns that. But here's the problem. In an ideal world, when sales shows up to have a proposal done and the proposal manager or somebody from proposal support says, so what's the strategy? In an ideal world, that would roll off the tongue of sales. They'll say, highlight our experience, highlight our reliability, downplay our geographical coverage, and downplay the recent incident that happened that's being reported in the paper. You go, okay, great, I can write that up, I got it. That's an ideal scenario. In the worst case, when, you know, even myself, when I ask sales, when a proposal manager asks sales, so what's the strategy? They look at you with this look on their face like, what are you talking about? And they say, what are you talking about? What's the strategy? It becomes our job to facilitate that discussion, to walk sales through the process of who's the client, what do they want, what don't they want, who's the competition, what are their strengths and weaknesses, how can we exploit their weaknesses and mitigate their strengths, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of our solution and offer, how can we exploit our strengths and mitigate our weaknesses, right, and develop a competitive, compelling strategy based on the information provided by sales and based on the solution as given by the subject matter experts. So we own the facilitation of strategy. We own being proactive. We own getting it scheduled. The measurement is clarity of that strategy, clear understanding of the key messages. Measurement is being proactive, getting started as early as possible, getting the proposal on the board, having the resources lined up, etc. That's area number 1 for proposal support. Area number 2 is planning and management. Classic proposal management, the development of the plan, the timeline, the assignment of responsibilities, the assignment matrix, defining the deliverable dates, motivating the team, monitoring all of the assignments, driving the deliverables, and ensuring that the proposal is on track the whole time and gets done on time. The measurement being hitting the deadline, working efficiently, providing status on an ongoing basis, and keeping everybody abreast of exactly where they are, as well as handling the unforeseens and putting in place contingency plans. Classic project management. I'd go back for a minute. Business and strategy, the personality and profile for this is somebody with a head for business, somebody who is a brilliant facilitator, somebody who can go toe-to-toe with sales at the highest level, somebody that can go toe-to-toe and act as a sounding board for the highest levels of subject matter experts. The personality and profile for planning and management is a classic project manager, somebody that enjoys the process, is very organized, is very detailed, can monitor the progress, can motivate and drive a team, can act as a leader and keep things moving forward. Two different personalities. And then there's the content development. You're a classic, many of you folks will use the term proposal writer. We don't use proposal writer. We refer to our experts as content developers, because writing diminishes what needs to be done. The content needs to be articulate. It needs to be grammatically correct. It needs to be proofread. There's articulation, rewriting, editing, proofing, all of that falls into here. The responsibilities being the clarity and correctness of the content, the measurement being the quality of that content. And again, personality-wise, this person is a writer by nature, a voracious reader, someone highly articulate, very verbal, extensive vocabulary, an understanding of language and appropriate usage. Very different than a head for business and strategy, and very different than project management. And then we have document management and production, wherein the responsibilities are document control, handling the master, handling the version control, formatting, insertion of graphics, labeling of graphics, making sure the headers and footers are appropriate, developing the table of contents, electronically burning CDs and creating the various files such that they're easy to open and they're organized in a way that makes it easy for the client. It includes shipping. It includes, for hard copy, copying, printing, QC, and all of that. The measurement, the quality of the document from a formatting standpoint, from a overall appearance, packaging, etc. Again, an entirely different mindset and personality profile than business and strategy or project management or content development. So again, I say with great affection and some concern, those of you that are doing all of this, wow, you've either got big shoulders, you're amazingly talented that you can do all of this. And again, in a more mature organization, it's more specialized. Project managers have project management skills, content developers have backgrounds in journalism, creative writing, and they're writers by nature, and you have dedicated document specialists or document managers. And then there's the one in parentheses, that is the knowledge base and the administration and development of that. Entirely separate, well, separate but dependent upon by a live engagement, all right? There is the need to develop content for the knowledge base or control that development. It should be, content developers are creating pieces of content that go into the knowledge base. That knowledge base person needs to understand the application, assuming you're using RFPIO. You need to be skilled in that application. You need to be able to monitor the library, moving new stuff in, removing dead stuff, etc. It's really a support function to the proposal support function. It's one of the resources that we rely upon. Right, so those are the 4+1 areas of the proposal support function. So I'd ask you, thinking about those 4 areas, or 4 areas plus 1, I'd ask you to think about what's your strength and what's your passion. In the best of cases, you're in a highly specialized proposal support function, and you are a proposal manager, or you are a proposal content developer, or you are the document specialist, or you're the knowledge base administrator, or you're the knowledge base librarian. If you're one of those wearing all of the hats, I'd ask you to think about what's your strength and passion, and where's your challenge. And when Strategic Proposals is working with a client, by way of evolution, not by revolution, we move them towards specialization. So if a group has 4 people and they're all wearing all the hats, we might find the person who loves to format document and move all the formatting to that person. And we might find the one person who's a brilliant facilitator and move that person towards facilitating all of the strategy development. So by evolution, through attrition, and as groups make changes, we're looking to evolve towards a more specialized model, rather than being a generalist and just doing the best you can and trying to handle all the functions. So I think I asked the question differently at the beginning. I'd ask this question, I'd ask you to be thinking about, is the proposal support function within your company, whether that's just you, whether it's 3 people or 30 people, is it run like a sandwich shop or a gourmet restaurant? You know, are you generalists doing the best you can with what you got? Or are you highly specialized? You have the resources you need, highly process driven, etc. And going sideways for a minute, one of the ways you can determine this is by having an assessment conducted by an objective outside expert third party. Strategic Proposals happens to be one of many. If you've been to an APMP conference, you know there are other supporting consultancies. Strategic Proposals offers 3 different levels of assessments, from a very simple self-assessment, a single form with about 20 questions. We have a benchmarker that is an extended series of questions that gets you a report. We have a health check, which is a little more extensive than that. We do it at no charge for qualified clients. And then we have a full comprehensive assessment that the fee is somewhere between, oh my God, and you've got to be kidding. It's extremely expensive, very comprehensive, very extensive. You know, you get a report that's thick as a brick. Anyway, for you to consider, sandwich shop, gourmet restaurant, or somewhere in between. Think about a gourmet restaurant, as I said, proactive, prepared, fully resourced, defined capacity. You know what you're going to serve, and that's one of the shortfalls we find with proposal groups is they don't have defined capacity. Provides a fine dining experience, quality meal, in our case, a quality document, defined roles, and associated skills and appearance. I leave you to think about that. The second question I asked, are you treated like a stepchild or a strategic partner? Strategic partner works closely with sales. They're respected. They're a valued function within the organization. They are seen as critical to the sales process. They are not viewed or treated as glorified admin. They're given the appropriate amount of time for development and production rather than design using up all of the time. Things for you to be thinking about. Strategic Proposals and the other consultancies that you see at APMP stand ready to help you move from that. If you're a strategic partner, as I just finished saying, close alignment with sales involved from the beginning, support all the way through finalist presentations, appropriately staffed, resourced, and funded, and respected and treated from senior management on down as a critical support function to sales. Last piece, and we're just at 2 o'clock here Eastern time. How do you convince management to make changes if and as needed? And you'll notice the italicized, bolded, and underlined you. How do you convince management to make changes? The somewhat tongue-in-cheek answer, well, maybe it's not, because my tongue's not in my cheek at the moment. You can't. And I know that sounds harsh, but you can't. or 99% of the time you can't. Any more than I as a husband can convince my wife of most things. And I say that with affection. You might scream to the rooftops that you need more resources, and management won't hear it. If myself as an outside expert or somebody else as an outside expert comes in, does an assessment and says, you need more resources, management will listen because we're experts, because we're credentialed, because we're from the outside. We're only saying what you've already saying or have been saying, but it's heard because we're from the outside, because we're highly paid, because we're seen as objective, because we come in with standardized criteria. But an assessment is the easiest way to get the information you need. An assessment, ideally that assessment presented to management by somebody like myself, and again, any other consultancy that is worth their salt. You really need to do it that way. And, say it however you like. A prophet isn't recognized in his own land. I tell my wife we need a new roof. She doesn't believe me. We bring in a house inspector that says, hey, you need a new roof. My wife says, why didn't you tell me? I say, I've been telling you that for a while. Just same reason kids don't listen to parents and they listen to their teacher. It's all of that. So unfortunately, you probably can't convince management, but you can undertake initiatives. Have an assessment conducted. In our case, with our assessments, we give you a score against best practice, against objective standardized criteria. We give you our findings, and most importantly, we give you recommendations for where to make your investments, for what changes you should make, the short-term low-hanging fruit to midterm to that which you should do someday when you get around to it. So to do it, some of the steps you can take, track your hours by type and by size. How many hours are you putting into a proposal? And here's what you might find. You might find that a proposal really needs 40 hours. Well, track the hours, but also take the time to think about how many hours should a proposal really have. And you can imagine if you realize that a proposal takes 40 hours and you're really only giving it 20 hours, you're probably shortchanging it by 50%, and that's why it's not the quality that it should be. Track your results, the effectiveness, achieving success. Ideally, you'll be using a checklist for the information and presentation of the quality of your proposals. And again, I can provide you a simple checklist. I'll give you my email at the end. Just send it to me. I'll send you a simple checklist for information and presentation. Track your efficiency, overtime used, how you're doing against the plan, etc. As I've said a couple of times, conduct an assessment, get a benchmark, and use that to persuade. And again, I've said it a few times, expert, objective, standardized best practice criteria. Ideally, develop a proposal quality and capability improvement plan, assuming that you're not at the top of your game and you score 100 across the board. Look at what you need to do and develop an improvement plan and an improvement initiative. So that's what I came here to say today. We did a review of the basics. We talked about pre-written content. I gave you the bottom-up response development versus the top-down, and made a plea for working from the top down. We talked about roles and responsibilities, the proposal team versus the proposal support function. We walked through the 4+1 areas of the proposal support function. We looked at the 3 questions: are you a stepchild or are you a strategic partner? And we talked about changing management's mindset. That's what I hope to cover. And so the 3 questions, my answer is proposal development is absolutely a profession. I started in this game in 1982. In 1987, I founded Strategic Proposals. In 1989, APMP was started for the express purpose of proposal development being a profession. somewhere in around 87, 88, a group of us got together and posed the question, isn't what we do a profession? In 1989, the association was started, and here we are in 2018 with close to 10,000 members. We're in something like 66 countries. We do about 24 major conferences a year. If you're not aware, we do conferences in the US, in England, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Australia, in South Africa. I think one was just done in Singapore. So it's definitely a profession. The proposal support function ideally should be seen as a critical sales support function. If you're not, something is wrong. In the best of cases, proposal support function is absolutely a critical sales support function. Where strategic proposals has been involved and had the honor of developing the proposal support function, in those companies, it's not only seen as a critical sales support function. In those companies, it is highlighted. It is where customer visits begin. Clients are brought to the proposal support center to say this is where it all starts, because until you win an until you're awarded the business based on an RFP, nothing happens. And then finally, you should be treated and respected as a strategic partner. And if you're not, again, something is wrong, and there are things you can do to bring about the change. That's it for me. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, I'm happy to send that to you. If you'd like additional information, if you'd like a checklist for the quality, if you'd like to know more about the available assessments, I am more than happy to send those to you. Just fire me an email with a title, something about Stepchild and strategic partner. Let me know what you're looking for, and I will get that to you. That's it for me. Back over to you, Andrew.
Excellent. Thank you so much, BJ, for taking the time to share your insights with us today. As always, I always learn so much, so thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining and attending the webinar today. There will be a follow-up email sent to everyone with a link to the presentation shortly after the broadcast. And if you have any questions, please feel free to direct them to BJ via the email alias on the screen here, bj@strategicproposals.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Andy.